I have completed week number 2 in the 5th annual Read What You Own challenge. Hello, welcome to my channel, another Bibliophile Reads. My name is Greg, and this is my wrap-up for the second week in the 5th annual Read What You Own challenge. The dates for this week were November 9th to the 15th. I will provide a link in the description of this video to my original announcement so you can see all the rules and exceptions that I have set for myself. But what did I read during this week? The first book I finished was an audiobook of Hard Times by Charles Dickens. It was 353 pages in the print edition. I have read this novel before, sometime in the early 2000s, or what is in the late 90s, somewhere around there. But I have another project that I'm working on where I was going to be reading a book from all the decades, beginning in 1850, all the way to the current decade. And the 1850s was the last slot that I had open. So I decided I wanted to read something from the 1850s. I did not want to read a very long book, so I picked Hard Times by Charles Dickens. It is Charles Dickens' shortest novel, at 353 pages long. Is it a great novel? Well, that depends. It is certainly not his best work ever. The setting for the novel is Coketown. I believe this is a fictionalized city somewhere in England. I'm not familiar enough with English geography to determine if it's real or it's not. I did do a Google search for Coketown, England, and Hard Times by Charles Dickens came up. That's why I think it's probably a fictionalized city, but it is about the superintendent, Thomas Gradgrind, who opens a school. Thomas Gradgrind has 2 children, Thomas and Louisa, and he is very strict. He wants just the facts taught to children, and everything must be related to just the facts. Into this school comes a girl who's not quite appropriate for his teaching. Her name is Sissy. Gradgrind says she should be named Cecilia, even though her name is Sissy. And Sissy's father has run off and left her alone. So instead of enrolling Sissy in the school, Gradgrind adopts her, sort of. And then the story takes place from there. Louisa, the daughter, will meet Bounderby. Bounderby is about 30 years older, and he offers to marry Louisa. And from then, the story takes place of the hardships these people encounter. It is very typical Dickens. As I said, I kind of liked it. I'm glad I reread it. Listening to the audiobook, I could not remember any details from the last time I read this book, but it was okay. I think there are better Charles Dickens novels. On my Kindle, I read Music to Sacrifice Virgins To by Kristopher, Trina, published in 2025. It is 566 pages long. This is an extreme horror novel. Kristopher Trina wrote a magnificent short novel a few years ago called Gone to See the Riverman. It was also a horror novel, but it was moody. It had characters. It had atmosphere. It had a good storyline. And Music to Sacrifice Virgin To has none of the above. It starts off with a fairly interesting premise. There is a young man, he is 25, his name is Asher. He was just dumped by his girlfriend, and he had to go back to his mother's house. At his mother's house, he discovers that he has inherited something from one of his reclusive uncles. His mother does not like her brother, whose name was Rex. She says, just ignore what he gave you in his inheritance. Just ignore it. Rex was not a good man. You do not want what he is giving you. Well, Asher, being 25, decides, I'm going to go see what Rex gave me. And Rex gave him a collection of heavy metal music albums, devil-worshipping music, death metal. And even though Asher is not into heavy metal music, he starts listening to some of these albums, especially because there is a goth girl across the street who's really into heavy metal. And in this collection of albums from his uncle Rex, he discovers a very strange album called Music to Sacrifice Virgins To. It is a unique album. There is no other album like it anywhere else in the world. It is music created by his uncle Rex and is very hardcore heavy metal, if I can say hardcore heavy metal. I'm not familiar with heavy metal music myself, so I may be mistaking that. And in this music, it's to sacrifice virgins to the devil too. And it turns out that Asher starts worshiping the devil after listening to this music. And he starts becoming possessed by his uncle Rex and goes deep into Satanism. And he gets followers. And his followers and Asher start doing very grotesque and nasty things. This novel is extremely dull and boring. Asher really has no sort of interesting characteristics. He's just a 25-year-old man or boy, or however you want to call someone who's 25, just a dull individual. Nothing special about him. But in this novel, Trina doesn't seem to care about what he's writing. He is just writing one scene, one atrocious scene after another scene, deciding just how grotesque and graphic I can make this novel. This novel is really an exercise in typing because it has no other value whatsoever. Trina does not even seem to understand devil worship. There is a part in this novel when he's describing some of these heavy metal or death metal bands just pretending to worship the devil. They have no idea what the devil is really like. And that is the problem with this novel. I don't think Trina knows what the devil is like. Now, I am an atheist. I don't believe in the devil, but I have read other fiction about Satan that is absolutely intriguing and fascinating. Think of The Exorcist by William Peter Blatty. That is a novel about the devil that will knock your socks off. Music to Sacrifice Virgins To. I almost DNF'd this book. I should have DNF'd this book because it was really boring and repetitive. Nothing of value whatsoever. This was a buddy read with Bad is Rad, and she absolutely detested the character of Asher, even more than I disliked him. I just found him annoying and dull, but she actively disliked him. But she's still a strong supporter of extreme horror novels. So this, for her, was an exception to the genre. But to me, this novel was just a flat-out dud. I listened to the audiobook Nightboat to Tangier by Kevin Barry. In the print edition, it is 272 pages long. On a sketchy port in Spain, two Irishmen are waiting for a woman to arrive on the boat, Maurice and Charlie. Maurice and Charlie are longtime partners, sometime adversaries, and they are, in essence, gangsters. They smuggled a lot of drugs in their youth, and they're now in their early 50s. Maurice is waiting for his daughter, Gilly, to arrive on one of these boats. They're not sure which boat she's supposed to arrive on. So this novel goes back and forth. In some chapters, it's Maurice and Charlie currently talking to each other, waiting for Dilly. In other chapters, you get their backstory, when they were young, when they started their criminal careers. And it is just an absolutely fabulous character study of these two men who struggled to be successful in life, and at times they were successful. They were rich gangsters at one point, and then broke gangsters at another. And it's this mixing of their lives, their longings, their past history are just utterly fascinating. The narrator of this audiobook was the author himself, Kevin Barry, and I liked listening to his voice. An Irishman reading to you can be very soothing, and his voice just fit the story very well. I can highly recommend Nightboat to Tangier by Kevin Barry. I also finished some short stories this week. The first two stories that I read come from the Shivers collection. The Shivers collection is only available at Amazon as either an audiobook or an ebook. And the first story was Jackknife by Joe Hill. It would be about 46 pages in print. And the narrator is a college professor who got into some texting scams with a student. The narrator says they didn't actually have sexual intercourse, although they exchanged some sexual texts, and these texts were discovered by the university and the narrator's wife. Of course, the university does not want this man teaching their students anymore, and the wife does not want her husband anymore, so he has to make his own way. He's living on his own, and one day he's walking through the woods. He discovers a tree with a jackknife stuck into the base. There is a cryptic note, and he pulls out this jackknife and keeps it. A few days later, he goes back to the tree, and he swears that that tree has moved. There is also an old hobo with a cat called the General. On another day, the narrator, although I'm calling him a narrator, although really it's in third person. I just don't remember his name. He goes to the tree and he discovers the cat General has been butchered on the tree. From there, things just get worse for the narrator. Is this a great story? Well, I was highly entertained because the narrator is unreliable. Is this really happening? Is the narrator somehow responsible for what's going bad in his life? You will have to read or listen to this story yourself to find out. The Indigo Room by Stephen Graham Jones. This would be about 36 pages in print. In a high-rise office, there is a woman going to a business meeting. She has her child in the office building with her. The managers do not approve of children being in the office building, so she's having a colleague take care of her child on the sly. And while she's in this meeting, she sees a colleague lose her head. She sees a colleague lose his hand, and she shakes her head, and everything's normal. She's just having a rough night, maybe hallucinating, maybe overtired. But then there is an elevator accident in the office building. And there you can sort of see where this story is taking place. I have only read one other book by Stephen Graham Jones. That was The Only Good Indians, and I really liked that novel. And as a short story, The Indigo Room was adequate. I belong to a short story reading group on Voxer, and this week we read Everything That Rises Must Converge by Flannery O'Connor. It is 16 pages long. This was a short story written in the last decade of Flannery O'Connor's life. It is the story of a son and his mother. It is shortly after integration. The son did graduate from college, but his only job right now is as a measly typewriter salesman. The mother has some health issues, and she's been assigned to take some classes in the downtown city. And the mother does not want to ride the bus on her own, so the son has to escort the mother on the bus. And there are some unusual encounters on the bus. The mother was brought up in the Southern tradition, where her family owned slaves in the past. So she's not comfortable riding on an integrated bus. The son is fascinated. He wants to make friends with the African Americans on the bus. And the African Americans on the bus really do not want to make friends with the son. And then there are more troubles. And what makes this story so fascinating to me is this relationship between the son and his mother. The mother buys a horrendously ugly hat. And the son says, "Your hat is fine, Mama." And then on the bus, his mother is wearing the hat, and an African American woman steps on the bus wearing the same hat. Oh no, that is just not the way the mother wants this world to go. And you get a peek into this world in the days of early integration and how people struggle to live with that. The mother wants nothing to do with it, and the son who's okay with it. This is truly a great short story. I am currently in the middle of reading 2 books. The first is The Cider House Rules by John Irving. I am reading this with The World According to John Irving group on Voxer. I'm not going to say a whole lot about this novel yet because I'm only at the 50% mark, and I'll be finishing up over the next 2 weeks. But in week 2, I did read 112 pages of this novel. I am also working my way through Alchemised by SenLinYu. I finished 165 pages this week. This is a 1,000-page fantasy novel, and I'm reading about a chapter a day. I am not normally a fantasy reader, but I saw some blisteringly bad reviews of this book on BookTube, and I wanted to check it out myself because the hatred displayed and froth towards this novel was just extraordinary. And I had to find out what that hatred was all about myself. And I think I've gotten to that point in this novel. And I'm pretty sure it just revolves around, what's to say, some non-consensual sexual relationships. I guess that causes some people conniption fits. It was disturbing, but it does not bother me as much as it bothers some people. But worse, this book is just boring. It has a magic system revolving around raising dead people that really, really should be interesting, but it's not. I'm considering DNFing this book. As I said in a previous video, I'm going to give it another 100 pages or so to see if it can pick up the pace, to see if I can get into this book. Otherwise, it's probably going to be a DNF. And the thing is, I don't want to DNF it because I want to review this book. I want to make a video saying, why should a book be hated so much? And I really can only do that if I can force myself to finish it. Okay, that is everything that I read for week 2. I am doing the 25,000 Platinum Challenge, and for this week I read 1,566 pages. My grand total for the challenge is 2,206 pages. And if my math is correct, I have completed 8.10% of my challenge. On to week 3. Thank you for watching and keep on reading.